Welcome to episode 34 of Cyclops is Waiting for Me, an X-Men, the animated series weekly recap podcast. I am JC, and this is the fourth of 4 episodes being recorded tonight. So we're on drink number 4.
Oh, you resorted to the ice.
Shut up, Rod.
Is that when you got on like one knee? You're mixing it too.
I'm being lazy right now.
It has been a night. We've been covering the Dark Phoenix quadrilogy. Is that right? Anyway.
Sure.
And
yeah.
There's a lot that it's for a good reason, but it's like a lot to.
It's some heavy shit, man.
Yeah.
We found out that Jean was being mind manipulated. She was ready to kill a galaxy that luckily was uninhabited. There's some stuff going on. We should finish the rest of the intro.
Yeah, and I'm Rod. I think we're supposed to plug our stuff here. Just look me up, Rod Kim. I'm on the internet. I do music and stuff and this podcast.
It gets tagged in the post.
Yeah, Cyclops is Waiting for Me as our weekly podcast series where we're going back and watching every single episode of the original 1992 X-Men the Animated Series in their original intended script order, building up to the release of X-Men 97 coming to Disney Plus in the fall of 2023. So in case you're wondering how we determine the order of the episodes, if they haven't fixed it on Disney Plus yet, we utilize the listed order and previously on X-Men, the making of an animated series by the lead showrunner Eric Lewald, which is also available for reference on Wikipedia.
And just for clarity, it is the list, not the entire book, that is available for reference on Wikipedia. Some quick reminders. We're a recap show about a series that came out 28 years ago. There will be spoilers, and if you don't want it spoiled for you, tough shit. Pause the podcast, watch the episode, and then come back. We're going to do our best to avoid mentioning anything about future episodes that we haven't covered yet. We are not sponsored or affiliated with Disney or Disney Plus in any way, shape, or form.
Insert joke if appropriate.
It's so obvious to people when we get to the 4th episode of any recording session.
Right? You guys live for it now, right? We're over halfway through the series, so you're ride or dies with us. Like you're either in it with us or you've given up. So.
We're not, or are we? This is.
I think we're over halfway now.
We are on episode 43 of the 76. So yes, we have crossed over. It got all wonky when we started doing multi-parts as single episodes for us. So
don't forget to follow us on social media at Cyclops IWFM Pod on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook. And of course, make sure to follow us on all your favorite podcast services. Finally, we record these episodes in batches. Not that you need to be reminded of that in the 4th one of the day for us. So if we're reacting to any news about the upcoming series, we may be a few weeks behind. I got nothing.
Yeah. So on to the show. Today we are talking about Season 3, Episode 17, titled The Dark Phoenix, Part 4, The Fate of the Phoenix, which is the finale of the Dark Phoenix saga. It aired on November 26 of 1994, and similar to the previous episode, sits at an 8.2 star rating on IMDb.
I love that they put this whole traumatic miniseries on us during the time of Thanksgiving in 90.
Yeah.
That's amazing. All right, just in time to argue with your family.
Yeah, because my family was totally talking about X-Men comics at Thanksgiving dinner. All right, so episode kicks off where, literally every episode of this quadrilogy, as Rod likes to say, has just picked up right where the previous one left off. And you have the capture of Jean from the Shi'ar Imperial Guards. Everybody is kind of, trying to ready themselves to defend Jean. This is the only real animation mistake I saw.
Besides all the real fire.
That was intentional.
Yeah.
But Wolverine's forehead was actually the same color as his skin tone instead of the yellow, and it totally was jarring for me.
We can make up some canon about that, like when Xavier's talking to Lalandra telepathically, it shoots through Wolverine's head.
No. But speaking of Xavier, he pops into Lalandra's head, and then you hear in a Shi'ar language the Aknin Hala, which stops the Imperial Guard, and essentially Xavier reveals that he has challenged everybody to a duel of honor and it cannot be refused. And then Beast gives the line of the episode for me in all of our names.
Yeah. This would have been a perfect moment for Xavier to be like, oh, all of your names.
Because I'm not going to fight.
Which, fair. They know each other well enough that they were all going to fight for Jean, but it is pretty hilarious that,
He made the split-second decision of, you're going to go to a battle of the death against opponents that I'm not even sure who they are.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Yeah, and we're not even sure it's going to be fair.
So they all teleport away and they end up on a ship. It is a little more than, your standard cruiser. It definitely had a little bit of almost an arena vibe. Is that a fair?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like a non-campy version of the Mojo Vision stuff.
Well, you say that. We're going to skip slightly ahead because we do see a shot of the crowd. So who did you recognize from the crowd?
Nobody. Was I supposed to?
So there were definitely some intentional and maybe coincidental characters seen in there. Intentional, there was a Skrull, there was a Kree, specifically the Kree soldier, like classic Captain Marvel style.
Yeah, okay.
There was literally a xenomorph from Alien, but with a red color pattern.
Maybe why did that not register to me?
I don't
would have
know.
noticed that. I see myself not. I don't know why I missed the Skrulls too, but I can see myself not
Up in the
Kree because my mental image of the Kree is usually burnt in as the Captain Marvel movie. I do remember the Kree from the comics every once in a while, but it was less exposure, so it doesn't stick with me.
Yeah, a few others that are in there, and these may have been a little less intentional or just kind of like more general like alien vibes. There's one that actually looks like a green version of the Thing. There's a Badoon, which is a Marvel alien character race. You have two that look like they're from Star Wars. You have one that looks like Twi'lek, the ones with the head tentacle things.
Oh.
And then the Ithorian, that's the one from the Cantina bar that looks like a hammerhead.
Nice.
And then one that I didn't recognize, but according to online, there was a alien flip, which is essentially kaiju from Ultraman Leo.
Oh.
And those were all apparently in there.
That sounds like a thing where they let like storyboard or animators or something, like kind of like insert their own Easter eggs. Like, we need alien crowd. We don't care what. Just don't get us in trouble.
So we're in this arena and you see, Lalandra is going back and forth with Charles, and Charles is like, look, I thought we were friends. Mm-hmm. And Lalandra says, well, I owe you my life and my throne. We are friends, but the Phoenix is way too powerful.
Because she destroyed this whole star system that, and it will only get hungrier.
Yeah. Originally, the Phoenix lived to serve the Empire, but now it lives to experience new sensations. How did you interpret that? Because that, for me, was like, it didn't have a choice in its own destiny, and they were kind of suppressing it in a way.
Yeah, I get the sense. So now that, me personally have seen the Kree and, the Marvel cinematic movies and stuff, unless this is not accurate to the comics and stuff, we're seeing like the Shi'ar and everybody, like they're at the very least less emotional than humans. And so we're kind of getting this almost, it was like the guards in England. Like you're supposed to kind of show.
Oh, the guys that tourists are now constantly trying to get to crack on TikTok?
Yeah.
Yes.
Or forever, people, even before social media, just trying to get photos of.
Yeah, but now you get
clout, right? Yeah. Clout for messing with people. But yeah, I get the sense that they're like, well, we're pretty emotionless, so we want you to guard, you who is guarding us, to be the most emotionless, because we just want you to be objective about things.
Right. And that's kind of like a theory within like higher levels of society, as emotion kind of goes away. Mm-hmm. But since we're the only society that we know of that's sentient, it's just a theory.
Yeah. So who knows?
Yep. But for me, it was almost a little bit sad of like, well, this is kind of like the repressed kid that if their parents are so overbearing and don't let them experience the world, the Phoenix is kind of in its teenager state of like, oh, you're going to experience a ton of stuff that you were not prepared for. And then you're going to go crazy and rebel. Unfortunately, rebellion here means you can blow up star systems. Yeah. And, like I said, they emphasized the fact that it was uninhabited, but what happens next time if it's not? And that's when we see all these alien species of, oh, the galaxy's a big freaking place. Mm-hmm. What happens if it's not? Is it going to be the Kree that are killed? Is it going to be the Skrulls that are killed? Is it going to be the not alien xenomorphs that are killed? And Jean actually justifies Lalandra's worry because she doesn't feel like she can contain it if it comes back.
Yeah, she says that the Phoenix is still inside of her. It's contained, but, it's still there.
So Xavier makes sure that it is clear to all in attendance that he has invoked the challenge of Aknin Hala, and Lalandra is against it. And she's like, you're just going to compound the tragedy at this point.
That was some great writing, because even for a kid show or whatever, just hearing that phrase, compounded the tragedy, was like, ugh.
Yeah. Because as emotionless as they seemed to be when talking about the Phoenix of the, lived strictly in service of the Empire, like, she knows that this is a tragedy that Jean has to be put down. Yeah, she's like, now I know that I have the strongest guard in the universe. They're not going to lose to you.
Yeah.
This is a duel of honor, i.e. to the death. So sorry, I'm going to off your entire team.
But Xavier's going to be fine.
Yeah, you get to live. You and Jubilee get to live.
Yeah, where has Jubilee during all this?
She's literally been sleeping in. She has no
Yeah.
idea any of this is happening.
Lilandra does go to consult with like the other leaders of
Right.
the galaxies and stuff. I didn't recognize them visually at first, but as they were talking, I do recognize the groups and stuff, the Kree and the Skrulls. I didn't recognize the Kree right at the beginning, though.
Right. So that is definitely one of those like been around in comics for decades. The Supreme Intelligence, giant floating head in a bottle. And then the Skrull Empress, she's been around forever as well. The only part of it that ebbs and flows within the Marvel comic universe are the Kree and the Skrull fighting each other? Is there a galactic civil war? Are they united, etc.? But at this point in the cartoon universe, they're obviously on friendly enough terms that they're like, yeah, we think it's fair. But then, to your point, when we were, getting ready for the episode, the Skrull Empress is just like, but they can't win, right?
Yeah, they can't be allowed to win.
And you interpreted that as you have to fix the game, essentially.
Yeah, I thought that meant they were going to rig something.
So we jump over, and essentially it's like a training room, kind of like a not so dangerous danger room. And the X-Men have been split off into groups. First, you have Beast and Storm, who kind of have a little bit of a differing opinion as to, is this the right thing to do? What were your thoughts on like that part of the conversation?
Well, anybody, if you were, watching the show, you obviously know you're in the audience. You're like, oh, you want Jean to live. You're invested in her. But if you were actually in this world, you might be like, maybe that one lady, she's worth doing away with. So the rest of us can be like guaranteed safety, at least from the Firebird. And so I think that's what, Beast is kind of saying. It's like, what side are we on here?
Yeah.
I did like that I don't know how many times they do this, but it stands out whenever they do. He calls her Aurora, her real name.
This was the first time she was ever addressed by her actual first name in the show.
I thought that because I remember just like, I hadn't heard him say that.
This confirmed from internet research. This was the first time her name was said in full.
So it's kind of... I say this almost in a funny way, but it's kind of serious too, is that like, it's serious. Because he just dropped all the bullshit. It's
like if my name was actually Jonathan and not John, and my parents said, Jonathan, we need to talk. Like, that's when it's like, oh, shit just got real.
Yeah, you fucked up.
I did appreciate, and this was, years before the movie would come out, the prevention of future crimes of another. It was even one step beyond what you would see in something like Minority Report years later, because it wasn't even like, it's a crime that she's going to commit. She's just the vessel, and this other thing is going to commit the crime, possibly.
Yeah.
It's like, are we really going to... Again, it's a little bit of a different stake because it was the uninhabited solar system of 5 billion. But it's like, oh, she did destruction of property. She didn't actually murder all these people. Are we really going to hold her accountable for maybe shit hits the fan again in the future?
Yeah, I didn't think about that shit. Besides the defensive fights, she really hasn't actually done anything yet. Not that she didn't intend to.
Yeah, she has a crazy amount of power, but at that point it's kind of just like incredibly gross negligence rather than like it's not even manslaughter at this point.
Which arguably is basically what the X-Men do all the time.
I mean, they are incredibly negligent, but not by the legal definition. Here, drop that building on top of this person. Hope there's nobody in it. Shoot that abandoned building with your optic blast. Hopefully there aren't squatters there.
You mentioned this in another episode, but I always love the image of Archangel like removing a perfectly good pane of glass and then having the option of just sitting it down, but just smashing it anyway.
Yeah. And then Storm gives the response, and this is kind of very in line with how Storm has been, especially with like the Morlocks and such, where it's like, well, we at least get a trial by combat. And I got to agree with Beast on this. It doesn't actually adhere to justice because all it just means is you had the stronger team, not the team that was actually right.
Yeah. It's like taking a math test to pass English or something. It's like, does that necessarily mean the thing you wanted to evaluate?
Yeah. You have a little bit of a smaller version of this back and forth between Gambit and Wolverine, where Gambit is also like, well, what if Lilandra's right? And Wolverine kind of basically says he's ride or die with Jean, like no matter what. It's end of the day, push comes to shove, I am with Jean all the way.
I kind of wonder too, because Wolverine's not necessarily like the multidimensional, immortal figure or whatever, but he's pretty close to it as far as a human goes. He's lived long enough. He's probably seen several lifetimes, and he was like, if nothing else matters to him, then this personal relationship probably like is held closer to him than like a historic, value of anything.
And I would agree to that. The only caveat I would say is I think given the time frame of it, he's in a second lifetime as opposed to like several at this point. But all the rest of you're saying, yeah, I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, so that he's the only one with a definite answer besides Lalandra.
Yeah, but going over to Lalandra, Charles tries to connect with Lalandra, goes into her mind because they have a psychic rapport similar to what Charles and Jean have in certain ways. But he immediately jumps to asking for her help to contain the Phoenix. And Lalandra's pissed. She's like, dude, if this is all I am to you right now and you're just trying to save your friend, you're kind of abusing the relationship that we had and putting me in an awful spot because I just declared what we're doing.
Yeah.
And also, you were the one that manipulated us into this trial by combat. Why didn't you try to get me to help you at this earlier time?
Yeah, which she's pretty right. He is manipulating her emotions.
Yeah, and she gives a proper response of, in this mental landscape, basically a pit opens underneath Charles and he just falls into it.
Yeah. Bye.
We jump to what looks like not necessarily a bridge, but like an overlook of the stars. And Cyclops is also questioning, is Lalandra in the right? Rogue gives this very heartfelt, I understand what you're going through right now. Like, I want a love that is like the love that you have, and you should fight for that. And Cyclops, being the pragmatist, I guess is kind of the best way of looking at it, is if I was in her spot, meaning Lalandra's, would I act any different?
Yeah, because he's also the number one there, and probably not, especially if it was somebody on someone else's team. Actually, right. I'm pretty sure if we look back, he's kind of made that call already for other people. I can't think of one right off the top of my head, but that's in character for him.
I feel like he hasn't had to face as tough a decision of somebody who is possibly innocent. But yeah, he'll take out somebody if he needs to.
for the quote unquote greater good.
Exactly. And that's where we see Jean come out in what I phrased it as the OG outfit, which is the green with the spiky yellow.
Yeah, the Marvel Girl outfit.
Right. So they specifically word it as she chose to wear this one because it's what she was wearing when she first met Cyclops. The comics, that's actually inaccurate.
Okay.
Because in the comics, if you remember Uncanny X-Men #1, she had the headpiece that covered most of her hair and it was like coming out
that's right.
on the side. This outfit did not actually debut until X-Men #39. So again, not a plot point by any means for this one, but that stood out to me because we've seen like flashbacks of the original X-Men team, but this is retcon to give it a little stronger meaning because she purposely chose to wear this one for Scott.
Yeah. She manifested it or carries it with her everywhere, either way.
And also in some of the most famous like X-Men comic book covers of the Dark Phoenix saga, she is also wearing this outfit specifically.
Yeah. And then Rogue fucks off.
Rogue fucked off, yeah.
That's my note. See? Says Rogue fucks off.
I can vouch he actually put...
I love her quote, though. I think it was something like, 2's company and 3's an eavesdropper.
Yes.
So I love that. She's like, oh, okay, so you're about to get it on in this open space portal thing, so I'm going to take off here. I kind of get that vibe, too. Not that anybody did it intentionally, but it's just like, this is the first thing you saw me in, or whatever. It's like, oh, that's kind of giving, like, very, like, intimate vibes.
You and I watched this show in such different ways. So... they have a little bit of their heart-to-heart with Scott and Jean, and it's, Jean asks, what happens if this breaks free? What if the next spot that it goes to is Earth? And kind of shows, like, what is her greatest fear of Earth being destroyed by the Phoenix Force, and says, is it worth the risk?
Yeah, she shows him telepathically or whatever, and they used real fire again in the animation.
They did. The interesting thing to me is it worth the risk really harkened back to Scott with Corsair from the Starjammers of, is one woman worth the risk? And Corsair's response was, this woman was.
Yeah.
Scott, without saying it, is getting that moment for himself right now.
He's his father's son.
Yeah, without knowing it.
Yeah. And he says, she's worth everything. His quote was, she's worth everything that is.
We're back at the arena area, and they're kind of going through the ground rules, essentially, of you're going to be transported to the blue area of Earth's moon, which is uncharted. They specified that piece. Rod, what do you know about the blue area of the moon?
I knew nothing before this. I didn't even know it was a real thing until you just asked me this question. I thought that was something they made up for this show, because I know about Dark Side of the Moon. Is that the same thing?
So blue area of the moon in the comics has been the home to the Watcher as well as the Inhumans.
Oh, okay. I do know like the Inhumans area, so that's the blue area. Gotcha.
So, yep, blue area of the moon. So they lay down the rules. If the X-Men win, the survivors will be released. So that was like, oh, cool. You might win, but you're going to still lose people.
Yeah. I think it's pretty much a given.
Yeah. And if the guard wins, which I'm assuming that means everybody's dead, then Shi'ar are able to choose what they want to do with Jean.
So then they get teleported to the blue area of the moon.
They do.
This part I was a little confused on. So either this was like just going to be left unresolved or I didn't catch something. Storm is surprised that she can fly, which kind of verifies something I was wondering about with her power set being tied to Earth because of the weather and stuff. So she's surprised. Then they realize, oh, everybody can breathe. And they notice all the ruins around them. Were the ruins supposed to be Inhumans ruins?
Maybe? I think that is left up for interpretation. But it's supposed to be there was something that was a civilization here.
Okay.
And it's under atmosphere. And I think that's the nuance of Storm is atmosphere. Yeah, it's not necessarily Earth as in our planet Earth. It is atmosphere relating to Earth.
Because it made me...
Or similar to Earth.
Yeah. Because between that and what the Skrull Empress said about not being allowed to win and this area of the moon being able to fly and breathe and stuff, I was like, so is this not the moon? Is this like some sort of like trap area or a simulation? But it didn't play out that way at all.
Well, I think we actually do get back to what that trump card would have been a little bit later on. Yeah. But no, I mean, here's the thing. You can't invoke a challenge in a fight to the death and then put somebody in an arena where they literally can't fight. I feel like if you are honor bound to respect the challenge, you can't put it in, like, you can't like start people in the middle of molten lava. You have to at least be above the volcano.
Yeah. No, I get that now, but it was just like a weird thing. It was like, what is this area? Okay.
Yeah. So across the arena, very similar to like, you know, a team deathmatch in a video game, the Imperial Guard spawn across, and we get a lot of very heavy action scenes. I don't think we're going to go through all of it in like fine detail, but everybody kind of splits into different teams, duos, trios, and it's kind of like a hit and run kind of scenario. Early on, the Shi'ar get an advantage, and one of the members of the Imperial Guard says, first round to the guard, that's a good omen. I was like, oh, I don't really know if murdering people rounds, but okay, bro. It's
kind of like what the Spartans or whatever, they're warriors. So they're just like, all right, cool, we got the upper hand.
We see what looks like it's going to be a murder when Wolverine takes down the pilot of the War Star duo, but then you find out it's just a robot inside and not a human or an alien that he shredded.
Yeah, because he says initiating like a repair sequence or something. It's like that liquid metal thing again where it's like reconstituting.
Yes. The same thing as Rod's favorite dogs, the werewolves.
Oh, yeah. The big metal dogs.
Big metal dogs. What are big dogs? Wolves. You get kind of a gladiator moment in there. Wolverine also pairs off against Stingray, and Stingray gives like a really kind of respectful quote. Like, I think there's a lot of like, you know, disdain on the humans, but Stingray says, you know, the loyalty you have speaks well to your species. And it's like, okay, maybe we're not the most like bottom dweller species in the universe at this point.
Yeah, like at least you have honor.
Yeah. Gladiator and Rogue start going back and forth, and Gladiator's getting the upper hand on her this time.
Yeah, because
they squared off before.
Yeah, he actually mentions it. He was like, oh, we get a rematch now, you know?
Yeah. Now I'm going to fuck you up, woman. That'll get taken out of context. We cut back to the ship, and Xavier is in pain, watching like empathetically what's happening to his team. And this is actually the first time we hear the title of Lilandra, where they call her Majestrix.
Oh, I thought that was just something they just said. I didn't know that was the title. Okay.
Gotcha. So instead of calling her Empress, Majestrix is the...
Gotcha.
Yeah, because at one point, Majestor is the placeholder for the head of the Empire, and Gladiator is actually that role in the comics at one point, but the female side is Majestrix. And her response is, the woman in me wants to comfort him, but the Empress needs to be made of steel.
That sounds like something that comes out of like the 80s barbarian movies, you know, like a statement. It's like, the woman in me has passion for, you know, but the warrior in me wants to kill.
And then snoo.
Yeah. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is spongy and weak.
Speaking of spongy and weak flesh, Jean and Scott end up finding a spot where they kind of like hole up for a second, and she puts a wall in front of them. Yeah. And Scott kind of must feel like they're at the end of the rope right now, because he's basically like confessing all his feelings, and there's so many things that he wants to say, and there's not enough time. And then the advantage of dating / being engaged, sort of married to a telepath, she says, well, you know, it's really the thoughts that count.
Yeah.
And it was a play on the normal phrasing, and I have no doubt it was intentional, but specifically the thoughts.
Yeah.
Plural, as opposed to the thought that counts.
Yeah.
So.
She can just like kind of instantly read his emotions and stuff,
Yeah.
which she didn't do when he went to go see Dazzler because she didn't want to go there.
She was also in heavy possession mode at that point. She'd also just woken up from like her fucked up dream too, Rod. Stop judging her. She's had a rough 48 hours.
All of them have.
She also has a cosmic entity in her body.
Well, to her credit, they've had a rough 48 hours. She's had like a rough, like 6 months or something?
At least that, yeah. So, they kiss and they hold hands and they emerge. And pretty quickly, Scott gets taken down. Mm-hmm. He confesses that he let her down. And when that happens, the Phoenix unleashes.
And Lilandra sees that and is like, nope, and then votes Plan Omega.
Yes. So that's, to me, what I was referring to of they can't still win. Even though they didn't have to use Plan Omega to take out the X-Men, that could have been the way that if they were about to lose, fuck Honor at that point.
Yeah, death ray from the sky.
Exactly.
Like tried and true sci-fi trope.
When that happens, it's kind of like a realization point for Xavier, and he calls out to the X-Men that they need to stop the Phoenix.
Which, you got to know is like rough, especially for Jean, because he's broadcasting this, and there's no way she's not getting the signal too.
Right, but at this point, she is overtaken by the Phoenix, and then she gets her rematch against Gladiator that Gladiator was looking forward to, because the last time they fought each other, he got tossed into literal space. Right. So they go at it, and then Xavier commands everybody to stop the Phoenix, Scott especially.
Before she powers up fully again.
Right, because she is just essentially awakened from within that cocoon, again, from the emotion of seeing Scott get taken down. Storm quickly gets dropped.
Yeah, well, she tries. She does try. Yes, because Scott resists a little bit, and Storm's like, if you're not going to do it, I got to do this.
Yeah, and doesn't last long. Wolverine has the opportunity to, but again, unlike the comic book versions of Wolverine, who did it in the Grant Morrison run, or the Hugh Jackman version, who put her out of her misery in Last Stand, Wolverine does not get the job done. He can't do it. Rogue goes in and actually is able to get a punch off on the Phoenix. Beast shoots her with a gun. And then Cyclops drops a pillar on her and says, it's done. And immediately, as soon as they said, it's done, I said out loud watching, it's not done.
It's like, what have you not learned through these last 48 hours?
Jean has a level of control at that point and is asking Cyclops to stop her. Scott pleads, says, use your mind. And kind of similar to what we just saw, where she's like, I would have to do it constantly, and I just can't live that way.
Yeah.
Because one mental break and it all comes back out again. So Jean is actually the one who sets the Plan Omega weapon online.
Yeah, because Lilandra's like, we didn't do this. What's going on?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as she does it, she confesses her love to Scott one more time and says, "Part of me will always be with you." And then the purple light hits from this beam, and the Phoenix fire pops up, and Jean is gone.
It's Cyclops that talks to Lilandra?
So
Xavier.
It's Xavier first, who says, "You've won."
Yeah, and
then Cyclops kind of goes at her like, I hope you're happy, you got your blood, essentially.
And Lilandra's like, I take no pleasure in this.
Which I genuinely believe. I think it's very much the heavy is the head that wears the crown, and if she needs to choose the life of one that has been incredibly unstable in just the last 48 hours versus billions of star systems. Also got to remember, like, she has to answer to the Kree and the Skrulls too. Yeah. So it's like, yes, it's blood on her hands, but it could be so much more blood. Is her worry on it at the end of the day. But then the Phoenix entity itself appears behind them.
When this happened, I was like, did everyone forget what the Phoenix is? Not even in this universe, just the definition of what sets the Phoenix creature apart from other birds or other creatures is that it always rises from its ashes.
But usually not within like 35 seconds. Yeah. The Phoenix kind of gives its little speech of who it is. And it's like, it was the presence of everything. It was used to stop the M'Kron crystal. And then in doing so, it ended up discovering emotion.
Yeah, my note says the Phoenix arises and apologizes for being kind of a dick.
You're not wrong.
But then the Phoenix explains that Jean's flame has been extinguished.
Yep.
And
The fire within has been extinguished, yeah.
But can be rekindled by another. So Scott and Logan kind of like argue about who's going to be the tribute.
Yeah, so Scott goes first, and it was weird. I don't know how Wolverine thought he was going to stop Scott, shy of killing Scott. Yeah. Like, I mean, I get you're in love with this woman, but dude, he was with her.
Yeah.
She was with him at the end. I don't know. Maybe it was like kind of that ultimate sacrifice of, if I could bring her back, she will be happy with him.
With you, yeah.
Versus if he's gone because he was the sacrifice, she's left with us, and none of us can fulfill that hole in her heart. Mm-hmm. So luckily, from the perspective of, well, I never said it had to be one, and they all accept, and they all kind of hold hands, and there's this weird bouncing ball of light that jumps through everybody, kind of a little reminiscent of the tree from the Phoenix Saga episodes, where it's everybody's power is going into her, and that brings Jean back. And the first thing she says when she's back is, "I love you, Scott." The Phoenix is like, "Well, this is over. I'm out."
Yeah, Phoenix fucks off.
Yep. And then we jump back to the mansion, and you get one really, really sad scene and then one hopeful scene. You get Lilandra, who's speaking telepathically with Charles and basically saying her farewells from space. And he questions, he's like, "Well, you're hiding a part of your mind from me. You've never done that before." And granted, I feel like this is a little thirsty from him, because they've only been like a thing telepathically for a few months at this point.
Yeah.
But she's like, "Nope. Part of the Empress is I got to be forever alone." And it's like, ooh.
Yeah, that's true, though, because if she didn't know it before, this whole kerfuffle has proven to her that she's going to have to make hard calls that no one else is going to be happy with.
And she can't let the emotions of somebody else drive her decision.
Yeah.
So they have their sad goodbye. And then it ends with Cyclops tucking in Jean. And I would say the vibe I got off of him was being content. So as hopeful as something as tragic as all of this has been, and probably levels of trauma that I can't even begin to explore, it's like, at least she's still here.
Yeah. And then they button that up with giggling children.
Fucking giggling children.
It's the Bond end card. That's just how I always love it.
Yep. Few minor, or I guess not minor, but a few things. In the comic, there is the Shi'ar, Kree, and Skrull leaders who all speak. Mm-hmm. And they actually go as far as saying that the Phoenix needs to be destroyed because the Phoenix is more dangerous to the universe than Galactus is.
Oh, shit.
From a threat perspective.
Yeah, if you're not familiar, the eater of worlds, or consumer, what's the word? Destroyer of worlds, but he eats them, right?
He literally, devourer.
Devourer of worlds, yeah, because I just have the image of him like literally putting it in his mouth like a piece of popcorn.
You watched that Marvel animated series from 2009 where George Takei was voicing Galactus and he was just popping planets?
Wait, I didn't know that was George Takei.
That was Takei.
That's awesome.
Yep. I only remember that because I had a Comic-Con memory pop up in my Facebook feed.
Yeah.
And I had interviewed a few of the voice actors from that cast.
Nice.
Also, in the comics, Jean was killed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So this was the first time in the comics that Jean was killed. And they chose to keep her alive because they wanted her around for the remainder of the series that had been ordered and everything.
Ratings,
like
baby.
That. And I also think it would have been, they fought tooth and nail to have Morph get killed. They unfortunately, from a story beat perspective, had to bring Morph back. I don't know if they ever would have been able to make that argument at this point in the relationship with Fox,
Yeah.
But, in the comics, like, the death and resurrections of Jean have been an ongoing story point for, literally 40 years now.
Yeah. Jean has died many times.
Yeah. I mean, and been resurrected, and another person resurrected as Jean. I don't even want to say the name because who knows, that may pop up in 97. Like, we don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, that is the Dark Phoenix saga. And this was a extensive recording session on a Saturday night in Los Angeles going through these 4 episodes. But, I haven't watched these in succession in, at least a decade, at least since I moved to Los Angeles.
Yeah.
It is one of the best 4-part stories of, I would go as far as saying, any cartoon easily, but I can't think of a 4-part story on TV that hit so perfect every single beat of the way through as the Dark Phoenix Saga did.
Yeah, this was done really well. Like, there's, besides a couple of goofs we've made and jabbing and stuff, this has been pretty immaculate, like, story-wise and everything. There's action and drama and, like, a little bit of comedy and stuff.
But I think that's also a part of, like, aside from Miscolor.
Yeah.
Miscolor's fucking production studio. But aside from that, it's like, I think we love it because it's a comic book and there's certain things that are tropes or whatever it is, that's a part of why we love it. Because if it was all so serious the entire time and you didn't get Wolverine getting thrown into a duck pond and stuff like that, it's less to hold on to. Like, it doesn't have that, like, I mean, shit, how many times have we made jokes during lockdown to not go crazy? And it's like, are they the best jokes? No, but we do it because otherwise we're going to lose our minds.
Yeah.
So I could see people making dumb decisions. I could see Wolverine making a duck joke when Jean is trying to kill him, you know?
I mean, this is more a testament to, they shouldn't do this now because I'm sure Feige and the whole Marvel crew have a better integration of all the X-Men stories to the MCU. But when Fox had X-Men, like, they literally should have just taken this as a storyboard.
Twice.
I said this during the regular Phoenix Saga too, but definitely this, because they've specifically done the Dark Phoenix Saga twice in the Fox X-Men stuff. They could have just taken this and made it like a teensy more serious for live action, and it'd have been great. Like, I can't believe they didn't take this story.
I think, at least in the first one, it was too cosmic for the Fox Marvel universe. Yeah. And then in the second one, they misinterpreted it. The fact that they didn't go the Shi'ar route and they went with the random aliens that nobody gave a shit about, that made no sense to me.
That even Jessica Chastain was like, I don't know my character's name. I was like, that's good. That's a good sign.
Yeah. Well, that is the Dark Phoenix Saga. Thank you guys for joining us. And if you have any thoughts, make sure to drop them into the comments of either the YouTube upload or the official Instagram of this episode. Just so you know, the official Instagram posts are the Monday ones. We call those the Mutant Monday posts because that's a hashtag that tends to get traffic. And if you like what you heard, we'd appreciate a rating on the podcast app of your choosing. Find us on Apple Podcasts, Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and CastBox. This has been too emotional to come up with something at the end. Yeah, I'm now just going to go pass out.
Same.